All lenses are made with compromises. The manufacturer has to balance optical image quality, cost and price, size, weight, and its perceived value. In the 6 years I've been using the Fujinon XF 18-135 f3.5-5.6, I felt like the compromises made in this lens design have been a great fit for my photography. So welcome to my really long-term review, 6-year review of my Fujinon XF 18-135 3.5-5.6R OIS WR-LM. That's a mouthful. Here's a summary, a spoiler. I love this lens. I find it to be extremely versatile, extremely durable, and a great value. So let's get some more details. So what I'm going to do in this review is talk about my history with this kind of lens, these what I'll call super zooms, which range, again, from 18 to 135 millimeter. That's a long zoom range. Also, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons, my experience of using this lens. So feel free to use the chapter marker belows, and at the belows, and at the end of this video, I'm going to walk through a sequence of about 10-15 photos that I've taken with this lens over the past 6 years. Talk a little bit about them. You can see how this lens performs and helps you maybe make a decision to consider a lens like this one or this exact lens. All right, so by way of introduction and kind of overview, I've been using lenses like this since 2004. When I had my Nikon D70, my first digital camera, I think it was a 18-70, something like that on there, or maybe it was even 18-135. So I've been using lenses like this for a really long time. For me, they're practical. They're a good compromise of all the things of image quality and value. Plus, they're just, again, I come back to the word practical. Being able to have one lens that does a whole bunch of things and does them pretty well has been a great asset in my photography. So the flexibility is important, and I am really, really grateful for having, most of the time, I put this one lens on and this is all I need. So I got this specific lens in February of 2015. So this is it's mid-January 2021, so about 6 years. During that time, I've taken a lot of photos with this lens, over 24,000 photos. So as you might imagine, I've kind of learned what it can and can't do. If you're totally unfamiliar with this lens, let's give you a little bit of a spec reading on this. First of all, what all those letters mean, the R, LM, OIS, WR. What does all that mean? Well, first, the R means there's a ring, so you have an aperture ring on the lens, like the olden days. Let's see, what do we got next? We've got, I should have this memorized, but I don't. The LM is the linear motor for the focusing system. OIS stands for optical image stabilization, which I am a huge fan of, and it works really well on this lens. And then the WR stands for weather resistant. This lens has been in the rain. It's been in some snow. Haven't gotten it dusty, thank goodness, but it's been used and been around, so it just feels solid. It's 18 to 135 millimeter on a crop sensor, which this my XT2 here is. That works out to a 27 to about 200 millimeter full frame equivalent. The minimum focusing distance of this lens is about 18 inches, so that's pretty close, and that's at the 135 millimeter end. The weight of the lens is about a pound. That's about 490 grams. So it's solid. It's a metal construction, mostly on the exterior. And the price currently is $899, 900 bucks. It does go on sale usually once a year for about $100 off. And again, it's an all metal exterior construction. So as I've mentioned, I've used this lens for a long time. It feels solid, but not overly dense, if that makes sense. It just feels like it's going to last a while. The autofocus is fast and accurate in my experience, and I've been grateful. There have been at least 1 or 2 firmware updates for this lens, which have helped improve the autofocus. That's one of my favorite things about the Fuji system is they will release firmware updates for cameras, for lenses, that help improve functionality and features. Sometimes it's almost like getting a new camera. The optical image stabilization works really well for me as I've gotten older and moved from, I can take a picture at 1/60th of a second. Now it's 125th of a second that I usually need. And the image stabilization works really, really well, helps me out. I'll show you some photos again, as I said, at the end, and you can see how the image stabilization works. As I've mentioned, I've used this in the rain, and it works really well. The weather resistance, I've not had any problems with this lens in all the time I've used it. So yay for versatility. Yay for just being a lens. It's the lens when I'm doing personal stuff, it's pretty much the lens that's on my camera, unless I'm deciding to do something a little different. As I mentioned, I've taken over 24,000 photos with this lens in the 6 years I've had it. When I travel, I take this lens, the 18-135, and the others. One of the other zooms I have, the 10-24 from Fuji, which I really like. That pretty much covers me. So when we went to London in 2018, I took over 1,700 photos, and 1,400 of those were with this lens, the 18-135. So it does a lot of what I need it to do. And then one of my favorite things to do with the 18-135 is to pair it with extension tubes and get kind of a semi-macro lens, additional functionality for not a lot of money. If you want to watch my extension tube video, I'll leave a link for that here and in the description. But extension tubes with this lens, it changes the minimum focusing distance from 18 inches to about 4 to 6 inches. You don't get a 1-to-1 magnification, but lets me do a lot of cool stuff with just an existing lens I already have. And these tubes from Velo, I think were $70, give or take a little bit. And then I shoot this at f8 with, a lot of times with the extension tubes, get really good sharpness. And again, I'll show you those in the photos at the end of this video. So the pros for this lens for me, versatility is number one. It is such a great lens to be able to have to go from wide, at least semi-wide, to medium telephoto in one package, and choose the exact focal length I want for the composition I'm trying to create. So as a clumsy person too, not changing lenses is always a good thing, especially if you're in weather environments, like rain and snow and dirt. It's great to not to have to change lenses. Or like me, to drop it and break it. I've done that once. It's not good. The image stabilization, as I've mentioned before, works really, really well on this camera. This lens, excuse me. It's nice and quiet, so it doesn't make any extra noise. And it just seems to work. I can definitely notice a difference when I take a photo and I forgot to turn it on. That's why I leave it on pretty much all the time. Image quality, I haven't talked a ton about that, but I have zero complaints. Well, almost zero. I'll get to that in the cons. But I think if you put this side by side with even a prime or some of Fuji's higher end zoom lenses, it'd be pretty hard to tell a difference just in strictly in image quality, unless you got into the extreme pixel peeping. Especially for image quality compared to other of these kind of super zooms I've had in the past, it's at least as good as the stuff I had from Nikon, and it's probably better. So grateful for that. It's been extremely durable as another pro. And for me, I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, every lens has to be created with compromise in mind. And I think this lens makes the most of all of its compromises. It's a good value, great image quality, extreme flexibility, and great durability. So overall, great value. There we go. So The cons, this lens is over 6 years old. It came out a little before I got it. So, in my perfect world, this lens would be about $100 less. It'd be $799 instead of $899. Just because I would hope, Fuji's covered their costs by now and get more people to consider this type of lens. I know a lot of people don't consider this lens, and I still don't know why. It's just been my go-to lens for so long. Another con is there is a bit of vignetting, especially if you've got blue sky or a lighter background at 135 millimeter. The corners will get a little darker. I don't mind that personally. I usually add a little vignetting to my photos, but I don't have quite as much control because it's already in the image sometimes. Another thing that, it's not the end of the world, but I don't love it, is this external zoom. So this is at 18 millimeters and you zoom to 135, the lens grows, but I guess that helps you have the lens grow on you the more you use it. Again, that's a design compromise. I do have the 50 to 140, which is an internal zoom. So as I zoom it, the lens doesn't change. But the lens is much larger because it's always its maximum size. So yeah. I would love, again, I know this was a compromise. I would love if this was a constant f4, but I also know that would make the lens larger, heavier, and more expensive. So I'm not afraid to push the ISO up an extra stop. So because I've found Fuji's high ISO performance, 1 is good, and 2 has kind of an organic feel to it more than a digital feel. So I don't mind the ISO noise on my Fuji cameras. So there we go. So let's take a look at some photos I've taken. We'll go back to almost the beginning of my time with this this lens, and we'll just take a quick peek at some of the settings as well as maybe a little story or two. So this is one of the first photos I took with this lens, and you'll get to see my editing style evolve a little bit, my photography style. So this is from May of 2015 on the XT1. Some architecture stuff, 18 millimeters, nothing fancy, but nice image quality. A little vignetting in the corners here, especially the top right. But I think I also added a vignette to this, so that could be Lightroom. Some more architecture stuff on a cloudy day in Bellevue, Washington. And here was a couple years later. Well, let's see, this was 2016, 3 years later on a blue sky day. So you get different looks, same building, always go back to the same place at least once or twice. Downtown Seattle park here. This is at 1/8 of a second, and I am resting the camera on, I think on my leg. I'm sitting down and resting the camera on my leg. But you can see how the image stabilization does a pretty good job. I wanted this 1/8 of a second to get some motion in the water, the motion of the people in the background. So stabilization did a nice job, kept the things that weren't moving nice and sharp. I threw this one in mostly to show that at ISO 6400, Fuji stuff is pretty decent. This is back with the XT1 still again, so this is still from 2015. So some street photography, which must be in black and white. You must take your street photos in black and white. You knew that, right? Maybe not. One of my favorite photos of all time, I have a long story that goes with this that I won't share with you right now, but people being the same and different. That's the short version of the story. Yeah, a couple folks waiting for the bus in Bellevue. Let's do some landscape, how this lens does with landscape photos. Just down the road from where I live here in Sammamish, Washington, a sunset, semi-challenging with the high dynamic range here, but the lens handled it really well, minimal flaring, just nice quality. A quieter scene, simple sky. Again, some vignetting here at 135 millimeters with the moon in the tree cradle there. Daylight again, this is just about a year ago, a year and a half now, excuse me. Out on the water on the ferry, taking a picture of another ferry and Mount Rainier. So minimal vignetting here, a little bit that you see here has probably been added by me in Lightroom. But again, nice sharp image, nothing, it just looks nice. Image quality wise. Next photos you're going to see are paired with the extension tube. And I found this 18 to 135 works best with the tubes at 135 millimeters at f8. So 2/50th of a second. These are all handheld. So you can see the image stabilization does a pretty good job to help me out. I like tripods. I use tripods, but the tripod I have, as soon as you adjust it, it's going to move just a little bit. So you're just off with your composition by a little bit. Plus, it's just one more thing to carry. You get a sense of the bokeh from the lens here. Bokeh. I say bokeh. I could be wrong. This is just outside my front door. So again, handheld, 1/25th of a second. Crank the ISO a little bit. And again, yay Fuji for pretty nice performance at high ISO. Detail shot here, still handheld, 1/25th of a second, ISO 800. This lens does just a really nice job. I have, again, if I have almost no complaints about this lens. My perfect world would be a little faster, and then I wouldn't have to have this guy, but I guess that's why this guy exists. Physics and lens design. So, yeah. Photo taken just last week with the tubes, again, handheld, f7.1, ISO 800. Again, just good detail. I got nothing else to say. I just think this lens is stinking amazing. So a few photos from our trip to London where I took those 1,700 photos. Some architecture at 18 millimeters. Again, just does a nice job. When I was preparing this video, I was like, why did I take this photo at these settings? Why did I take it at ISO 3200 on a semi-sunny day at shutter speed of 2000? So I wish I had used these settings. Here's the exposure equivalent of that. But it's the Radcliffe camera in Oxford on a dramatic sky day. Anyway, I think I was inside right before I took this photo and forgot to change my ISO and just was worried about the shutter speed, and because I was so excited to take this picture. It was just having so much fun. At King's Cross Station inside, 18 millimeters. Again, the image stabilization just works nicely. Handheld. All these photos I think that I've shown you have been handheld. So, and last but not least, a photo from Tower Bridge of the Shard and London City Hall, looking at the sunset. So you get a little bit of you get the sun stars with this lens at f16. So, yeah. So to wrap all this up, I love this lens. I think it's a great value. It's very versatile. It's been super dependable for me. The image quality has been, I've been very, very happy with it. So I hope you might consider this lens, give it a chance to grow on you and discover the fun and kind of somewhat magic that lives in this really, really versatile lens. I give it a 4.5 out of 5 donuts. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will be doing future long-term reviews on my other Fuji lenses in the future. And as we are required by law as a YouTube person, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like, write a comment if you have this lens and had experience with it. I want to share about that or your thoughts on this video. I'd love to receive that. So until I see you again in the next video, have fun creating photos. Be safe, wash your hands. We've still got a ways to go with this COVID stuff. And yeah, so we'll see you again in the next video.